Hello everybody and welcome to another signing video. And as you've seen in the title, I'm meeting Jerry Lawler for the second time. And you might be wondering why I have the face mask on. That's because I'm about to leave. I thought I would film this portion of the video a few minutes before I'm about to leave. Uh, I did meet him before on May 18th, 2019. Today, as of filming this, today's date is May 15th, 2021. So almost 2 years after I met him the first time, and I had the similar experience with him the first time, where I had a Q&A session like this one has, and you will be seeing that. It had a pizza party then, and this is pre-COVID, so we didn't have to wear the face masks. He told stories. You got to watch Jerry Lawler documentary from the WWE documentary. It's Good to Be the King. And I also got two things. You also got one item signed and one picture, and any extra pictures or autographs you had to pay extra for it. But this one here, you get 3 pictures and 3 autographs for the one price of $60, which it was $60 before for the VIP package. And first thing I got signed in 2019, and I actually got both items signed or personalized. The first item is Good to Be the King sometimes, and open it up a little bit here. And there is the signature. But this one is not authenticated. And neither is this next one. It's from the Can You Take the Heat? The WWF is Cooking cookbook. And there it is. And if you want to see the recipe, I'll get it closer here in a little bit, or let you read it. If you want to screenshot the recipe from that one, go right ahead. Of course, you had to rewind it a little bit more to be able to screenshot it, but and again, I will be getting 3 items signed. And of course, another picture with him. And I will be, if I'm able to, but I'm not sure if the authentication company will be there for the VIP. But I will try to get them authenticated like I did with the Mick Foley DVDs, and then the figure right here. And these 3, I'm going to get 3 DVDs signed. Now, like I said with the Mick Foley, I don't believe in getting one signed that has a digipack. That's a digipack case. Mainly because you don't know if the case is going to break. So these are the same way. Because like the Lawler's, like you see the spine there, I'm not going to ever get that one signed, mainly because I never know if it's going to break. I would have to get rid of it, and I'm not going to just keep a broken case. So, and these 3 DVDs has 50% of the same name, and they're all classic Memphis wrestling. This one is The Loser to Leave Town, Best of Jerry Lawler versus Bill Dundee. Get a little bit closer so you can see it. Jerry Lawler versus the Monsters, and Jerry Lawler versus Andy Kaufman. And I did ask people to, if they would like me to try to ask them a question on their behalf. I got like a total of 6 to 10 questions from other people. And don't get, if I don't ask you a question, I apologize ahead of time. And there's 2 reasons why I might not ask. And there's like a added bonus with the second reason. The first one is questions I like to ask myself. The second reason being there's other people that's going to be there that's going to be asking questions, and I'm going to have to give other people a chance to ask questions as well. And they're going to go live on Facebook for this event. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if people that lives like in another state will be able to be able to watch it. I'm assuming that you would be able to, but I'm not sure if you would. That's why I won't be sharing it at all. Plus, I need the space on my phone so I can record it. So I'll probably will be sharing it after sharing the, if I'm able to share the when they went live after this video is uploaded. Uh, and you will be seeing each question I have. Uh, I have, and there's like 80 plus. Depends, and what I mean by plus, it depends if I come up with any more after filming this portion. Uh, then and before I go, before I show you the questions, you might be wondering, isn't that the same shirt you wore in your last video? Or you might be saying, doesn't he ever change shirts? I I uh assure you that I did change shirts. It's just I happened to pick this one to wear to Jerry Lawler, or to meet Jerry Lawler for the second time. Uh, and on top of that, and you might be wondering, why didn't I wear a or a Jerry Lawler shirt like I did with when I met Mick Foley, wearing the Mick Foley one? That's because I did not want to get a Jerry Lawler shirt from Pro Wrestling Tees that I didn't like the design of. So I just thought, why not wear a Owen Hart shirt, since he I had a match or more, or one match, if not more than one, with Owen, along with he had rivalries with the Harts too. Uh, so let's see the questions, and then after you see the questions, there will be go straight to the Q&A. If not, it will see me at Blenders here in Evansville, Indiana, which was going to be happening at Blenders next to Secret Headquarters, which hosted it before. It's just they needed a bigger venue.
in here. It's Lawler. I like to do this every couple of years. It's my way of showing thanks. I wouldn't be anything without this guy and Lance Russell. He would probably say the same thing about Lance Russell. You know, I ended up doing, well, I was a wrestler, did all that, did MMA, fighting, commentary for UFC, and it all patterned after Memphis. And I'm sure everyone here has something they want to thank you for. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, the thing, everybody, if you don't know who Lance Russell is, passed away a few years ago, but that's Lance Russell on Jeff's shirt right there, and as it says, the voice of Memphis Wrestling. And he was the voice of Memphis Wrestling when I was just a fan watching the show every Saturday morning. In Memphis, we had a live television show every Saturday morning for 90 minutes, hour and a half show. Nobody else in the country had a show like that. It was live every single week. And it was like the highest rated show. Everybody in the city got up on it. They go out Friday night, do whatever, party and everything, and they'd sleep till about 11 o'clock on Saturday morning and wake up, boom, and turn on the rest of the show.
You hope that thing was spinning on your
You'd
TV.
see this thing spinning around it. I appreciate the view here. I gotta stare at this guy's butt. But anyway, yeah, and I was just probably just about to graduate high school, and I was majoring in art, and a lot of people may or may not know, but anyway, I was planning on becoming an artist. That's why I became such a big comic book fan and everything. I was hoping to someday work for DC Comics, drawing Superman, which was my childhood hero, and that I always patterned everything after. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, whatever. That was my original intent. But somewhere along the line, my dad and I started going. We watched the wrestling show every Saturday morning, but then we started going to the live matches. Not only would we have the live show on Saturday morning, then every Monday night at South Coliseum, they would have a live event, big card every week. So we would go to those matches. Actually, at that time, it was before the Mid-South Coliseum. It was downtown at the Ellis Auditorium. So my dad and I would go, and sometimes I would take a little sketchbook or whatever, and I would do some drawings and doodles and stuff like that, maybe some sketches of the wrestlers while the matches were going on. And one day, somebody that was like sitting next to them, I'd show them to the other fans sitting there, and I'd write, oh, nice drawings and stuff. One day, somebody said, you should send those in to the wrestling show. They might show them on TV. So I said, well, not a bad idea. So anyway, I didn't know. Tojo Yamamoto, the interns, and that sort of thing, the main wrestlers at the time. And not expecting anything. I was hoping that he might show them, but didn't really expect anything out of it. Didn't even know the rest or whatever. But anyway, I sent him in. That very Saturday morning, get up, turn the TV on, and there's Lance Russell and Dave Brown, who was the co-host. Lance and Dave are sitting at the desk, and they're welcoming everybody to the show Saturday morning. And I see all of a sudden on the side of his desk, my pictures are sitting there, my artwork. And I just like, oh my gosh, there's my artwork. They're gonna show it sometime during the show. So sure enough, about halfway through the show, Lance Russell reaches over and he says, Dave, look, we got some artwork from a young fan out there by the name of Jerry Lawler, and we want to show this artwork. It's really good, Jerry. And he just holds it up, this is back in 1970 or something like that. So he just holds the artwork up, and there's my pictures. And I was like, kid, I was on cloud nine seeing my artwork on TV. And so then, they talked about the matches, and they showed the pictures. And then the rest of the show went on. And then when the show was over, I had put all my information on the artwork, of course. When the show was over, my phone rings. I answer the phone, hello, and there was that unmistakable voice of Lance Russell on the phone talking to me. He says, is this Jerry Lawler? And I said, yes, it is. He said, well, Jerry, we got your artwork. Of course, we showed it on TV today, and everybody loved it. And as a matter of fact, he said one of our main wrestlers, Jackie Fargo, wants to know if you would come over to the show next week, and we'll have you on the show. And he wants to know if you would do some artwork for him. He owned a nightclub in Memphis as well. And so I'm sitting there like, yes, I will. And so that was the way I got my foot in the door. Jackie Fargo at the time was like, he was like John Cena, or he is now in Memphis wrestling at that time. He was the big star, and so big he owned his own. He wrestled. He owned his own nightclub and the restaurant and all this sort of stuff. And so I got to meet Jackie Fargo, who was my biggest wrestling hero, and he wanted me to do work for him. He wanted me to do drawings and stuff for. I'll never forget. He had me come down to his nightclub, and I just had my buckets of paint and markers and all this kind of stuff, and he just wanted me to paint caricatures and drawings of him all over the walls of his club. So I was down there for weeks just painting pictures of Jackie Fargo, and then of course they would show my pictures on TV every week. At that time they didn't send a camera crew out like this guy here and film the results or film any highlights of the matches. Just every week Lance and Dave would sit there and say, well, let's talk about what happened Monday night. Jackie Fargo beat Tojo Yamamoto. They would just give the results with no highlights. So what I wound up doing was being like a sort of like a courtroom or a ringside artist. Whenever they talked about Jackie Fargo beating Tojo Yamamoto, I would have a picture of of Jackie drop kicking Tojo and this sort of stuff. So they would show that while they were talking about the matches. So that really got my foot in the door. And then meeting Jackie Fargo and getting to became friends with him after doing so much work for him, the artwork and everything. And one thing led to another, and I started hounding him after getting to make some trips with him to some small towns and stuff. And I'll never forget one time, I just asked him, Jackie, I would really love this. Looks like so much fun. I know I'm going to college for art and everything, but if you could just let me try wrestling, just throw me out there on a Saturday morning, let the main guys beat me up or something. I just would love to, try to get in the ring one time. And he said, oh no, kid, you're too good an artist. You don't want to get involved in this stuff. Just stick with art. And I finally, I'll never forget, I told him, I said, if you just let me try it one time, just one time, I promise you I'll go back to being an artist. I won't ever bother you again about wrestling. And that was 51 years ago, and of course I'm still doing the wrestling here today, But yeah, if Lance Russell had never shown my pictures on TV, or if he had never called me after the show, there would never be a Jerry King Lawler in wrestling. So yeah, I owe a lot to Lance. We all do. But anyway, there was a long story that meant nothing. So welcome everybody. This is, I guess, it's going to be a Q&A. We're just going to talk about some of the stuff that you guys, if you have any questions or anything you'd like to, I don't know if I know the answers, but I'll do my best to try to answer anything you guys got on your mind. Anybody have a question? Oh, please.
How long did you wrestle down at the Coliseum?
At the Evansville Coliseum? Oh my gosh. Well, I started in 1970. And my first match in Memphis, and it was like in December of 1970. So really 71 was the first full year of wrestling. And at that time, not like now, you see WWE, they have NXT, which is their developmental company where they, guys that are just trying to get started, they start at NXT, and if they get finally get enough experience, then they move them up to either SmackDown or Raw to the WWE. Well, at that time, our territory is what everybody used to call the wrestling parts of the country. The whole country was divided up into about I think at that time there were 32 different territories. Because back in those days, guys didn't fly. You didn't fly to trips. You had a territory that you could drive to the towns every single night. I mean, you could. In our territory, the home base was Nashville, Tennessee. That's where the office was. And so our territory consisted of cities within a 250-mile radius of Nashville. So our territory would involve Nashville, Memphis, all of Tennessee, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Jackson, and all of Kentucky. It was involved Louisville and Lexington, and then southern Indiana, which was Evansville was our main city in southern Indiana, and then we had eastern Arkansas and northern Mississippi. That was our territory, because guys that lived and worked here would live in Nashville, and you could get in your car at, you know, maybe 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and drive down to Memphis, which was 200 miles, and you know, get there 5, 6 o'clock, go in, wrestle your match, get out of there at 10 or 10:30, and drive back home to Nashville. And you know, it was almost like an 8 to 10 hour workday for any normal person. So that's the way the territories worked at that time. So, but before you made it, when you were just getting started, before you made it to that territory, they had a little developmental territory, which was just in Alabama. Alabama just didn't have, other than Birmingham, didn't have a lot of major cities, and so they put together a little territory of very small towns in Alabama, which was Selmer, Montgomery, Anniston, Gadsden, and sometimes Huntsville. But anyway, so the guys that were just getting started, like myself at that time, they would send you down there. You'd live in Selmer and you'd work those towns. You get to work every night, but you're trying to get good enough to come up to the big cities like Memphis and Nashville and Evansville and that sort of thing. So I started in that little territory, and then I was there for almost a year. And so like in late 71 or 72, they brought me and Jim White and Sam Bass up to the regular territory. And that's when we started. Evansville was our weekly Wednesday night city.
Yeah.
So we came to Evansville every Wednesday night, probably, at least in my case, starting in early 70s for like 20 straight years, up until the 90s, you know. So Evansville was one of my all-time favorite places. I was just telling Jeff back there on the way driving up here. He asked me about how many people the Evansville Coliseum would seat. And what would you say? 3,000? 3,500?
I've got 3,106 cram violating fire.
Okay, well, that's what I told him. I said around 3,000. But I'll never forget the night that I wrestled Andre the Giant here in Evansville. And Christine Jarrett, I don't know if you remember Christine Jarrett, that name. Of course, Jerry Jarrett was my partner in this territory. His mother was Christine. Evansville was considered her town. In other words, she personally took responsibility for promoting the matches here in Evansville. She watched over everything, sold the advance tickets and all of that sort of stuff. So Evansville was Christine Jarrett's town. So the night we had me against Andre the Giant, she had been slaving away all day, and it was time for the matches to start. And all of a sudden, we usually didn't even see Christine come down to the locker rooms because she'd be busy selling tickets. And she came down to the locker rooms about 10 minutes before start time, and she was just wringing wet with sweat. And but she had a big smile on her face. And she came down and she said, "Somebody get a magic marker and write it on the wall, because this is the biggest crowd that we'll ever have in the history of Evansville, Indiana," that night. And it was like you said. I mean, she said, "I even sold tickets to people that are standing out in the lobby and can't even see into the arena." So
Actually, I remember as a little kid, they were pulled out the bleachers. There weren't bleachers there past 90, 89.
Right.
And they kept adding rows of chairs, adding rows. And it was supposed to start. I think it started a few times.
Yeah. It was an amazing sight. But Evansville was always we enjoyed Evansville. Like when I lived in Nashville, or when I lived in Hendersonville, actually, it was an easy trip over to Evansville, you know. And a lot of times then when I finally moved back to Memphis, we'd drive up and drive from Memphis to Louisville, which was a long drive on Tuesdays after working in Memphis on Monday night. That was a long drive, but then we'd stay over, spend the night in Louisville, and then there was just a short drive over to Evansville the next day, and then back home after that. So it was always fun. The old building, it was just, you know, it was one of those kind of places that you It wasn't nothing fancy about it at all. We dressed down in the basement in the back. I don't know if any of you guys ever got to see. And I guess it's all still there, and it probably looks just the same as it always did. But yeah, we had a fun time there. A lot of good memories of that old basement. We had this doctor. What was his name? Do you remember?
I've seen the video.
Yeah, well, yeah. We had this old doctor back in the day, when you had an athletic commission that kind of oversaw the matches and everything and what went on. Really, all they did was it was a way to tax the wrestling company. But they were responsible for every wrestler had to get sort of a small physical before you were considered able to perform that night. And it was just they hired just this feeble old guy. I mean, he had to be 85 years old at that time anyway. Just a retired doctor, and he would come down. He would check your blood pressure and your pulse and temperature and that sort of thing. Say, okay, you're ready to go, Jerry. And that kind of thing. And he had this nice little old doctor bag. You know, it was like a little alligator bag with the handles. And I don't know how. I guess he may have been suffering from a little bit of dementia, because I don't know how this worked on him every single week, but it did. He would come in and he had a little cubicle, and he had a chair here, and he had his chair, and he put his little doctor bag right here. He put out his stethoscope, and there was like a little small table here, and then there was a wooden wall, and then a wooden wall here. But this wall the wall that would go to the next cubicle, it didn't go all the way to the ceiling. It was maybe a gap like this high between that and the ceiling. Every single week, Doc would come in, he would sit down, and he would be asking somebody else to come in over here to start get their, check their pulse and that sort of thing, check their heart rate. Well, I would go in the next booth and I would get a coat hanger, and I would straighten it out, and I would leave a little hook down on the end, of course. And I would climb up on the next thing over, and I'm looking over at the doc, and he's sitting here talking to this guy. I would reach with the coat hanger and I would hook his bag. And I would hook his bag, and every week I would pull that bag up while he's checking this guy's pulse. Then he'd turn around and go, hey, where's my bag? Okay. And it never got old. We just did it a million times, and I'd always had fun with that. But we did some other funny ribs with him.
Yeah, there's one on YouTube if you can find it.
Yeah. We had the cameraman come down there one week, and we told the doc, we want to put you on TV. We want to do an interview with you and let all the fans see it, and tell them what you do here every week, and and how you work with us here in Evansville. And so I don't even know if I can tell this story. Anyway, Lance was there, and Lance started interviewing the doctor, and the doctor was saying, yeah, well, I have to check all of these wrestlers out before they go out there. And then all of a sudden I come walking out, right? And the doc thinks it's like on live TV. And so anyway, as the doc is saying, I said, yeah, doc. And he turns around and I said, yeah, doc always checks us out every week. Right, doc? He said, oh, yeah, Jerry, I sure do. And I said, as a matter of fact, show him how you do it. Show him how you check us for hemorrhoids. And so I turned her around and I pulled my pants down right on the camera, and the doctor, oh my God, no, we don't do that.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, we saved that video. We didn't air it on TV. But yeah, we were here at the Coliseum a lot of times. I mean, it was a great place to wrestle.
When you wrestle Bret Hart and kiss his feet, does it smell like Canadian bacon?
I don't remember. That was one of my most fun feuds or rivalries or whatever up there with Bret Hart, and especially for that match, I really enjoyed all of the things that we would come up with to try to build up to that match. I don't know if people remember, but Bret the Hitman Hart and I had a match, and it started out because every time I would go to the ring, I would tell all the fans there in the WWE, I said, oh, you're a bunch of peons, and when I walk by, you should all get down and kiss my royal feet. Right? And so I would say that every week. And so finally, and I would tell Bret Hart, after this match, you're going to have to kiss my feet after I beat you. So it worked down to finally we had an actual kiss my foot match. Whoever lost would have to kiss his opponent, get down and kiss his opponent's feet. And so the build up to that, I would go on TV and I say, oh my gosh, I can't wait till that Bret Hart has to kiss my feet. And I pull my socks off and I said, my feet are gonna be so filthy. I'm not gonna wash my feet for a month. They're gonna be awful. Then the next week we went out and we were actually in a horse stable, and all these horses were around, and of course there was horse manure all over the ground, and I'm walking around in this horse manure. I'm getting my feet ready for you, Bret Hart. Get ready, because this is what you're gonna be kissing. So we did, I don't know, several different things, and then when we got ready to have the match, I mean, I had underneath my boots, I had some socks with nasty holes in them, just filthy looking socks, and I had all kind of dirt stuff on my feet. So I finally got him down, and I pulled off my boot, and I'm ready to make him kiss my feet. And okay, when I got my foot close to his, then he gets up, makes his big comeback, and somehow, I don't know how, but I mean, if I tried it today, I couldn't do it. Somehow he twisted me like a pretzel, and he stuck my foot in my mouth. Right? So anyway, and the interesting fact on that was, after I had my filthy feet put in my mouth, we came back the next week, and I said, it's the worst experience of my life. I actually threw up on TV. That was the first time that had ever happened. After the match, they were interviewing me down in the locker room, and I threw up on the mirror right in front of me as they were talking to me. So then the next week, I said, because of this, I usually had perfect dental hygiene, and so after what Bret Hart did to me, I had to bring in my own personal dentist. Anybody remember that?
I do.
Dr. Isaac Yankum, who came in as my dentist. That was his first appearance in the WWE. And he later on, he went on to become Kane, the Undertaker's brother. So that was, I feel responsible for bringing Kane into the WWE as my dentist. So what was it? Does that answer the original question? Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Growing up, one of my favorite feuds with you was with Andy Kaufman. Can you tell us a story with him?
That's a long story. But you're right. I don't do a radio interview or newspaper interview or anything like this that I don't get asked about Andy Kaufman. I mean, I get asked all the time, what was the biggest thing that happened to you in your career? And I always say Andy Kaufman. I mean, it was like, I don't know did anybody get to see the story, the TV show that was on A&E a couple weeks ago?
No, we did. I did.
About, anyway, we were kind of, it's in search of lost WWE treasures and that sort of thing. And part of it was, part of my episode was they were searching for the neck brace that Andy Kaufman wore after I gave him the pile driver in the match in Memphis. And so, and at that time, I didn't even know that they were talking about it, but I didn't see that interview until the show. But like even Triple H was talking about the fact that, probably the match that I had against Andy Kaufman, I mean, I think it really changed the way wrestling was viewed, I mean, by the entire nation. I mean, and that sort of made, I don't know, it kind of made it acceptable to be a part of pop culture, to be a wrestling fan. I mean, before that, it was, you say, oh, I'm a closet wrestling fan, I don't want to admit, that I like wrestling. And most people were almost ashamed to like wrestling. But, after that got so much publicity and it got nationwide exposure, being on the David Letterman show with Andy, and it just made it a cool thing to be involved with. And if you watched after that match that we had down in Memphis, all of a sudden the WWE, which was on cable TV, they said, hey, this is a good thing. Let's involve some celebrities with our wrestling. And first of all, they had they brought in Cyndi Lauper with Ken Lou Albano. Then Mr. T got involved in WrestleMania, and then man, it just went from there until now. And then it went full cycle. First of all, they were involving all the Hollywood stars with wrestling, And then all of a sudden the wrestlers became Hollywood stars with, The Rock going from wrestling and John Cena and Stone Cold to be, movie stars. So, I honestly believe, and Triple H said the same thing, without that match with Andy Kaufman, that probably wouldn't have happened. It would have just stayed pro wrestling, in places like the Evansville Coliseum and stuff like that, instead of being branched out into WrestleManias in 100,000 seat stadiums. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And Andy was really a neat guy. He loved wrestling, grew up a wrestling fan, and that was what was part of it. And wrestling affected Andy's whole career. I mean, he would tell me, he said, "Jerry, I'm not a comedian." Well, I take it back. He never called me Jerry. That was a cool thing. Andy and I were the same age, but he never once called me Jerry. He always referred to me as Mr. Lawler. That's what he would just always call me, Mr. Lawler. I used to tell him, "Andy, Mr. Lawler's my dad. I'm Jerry. No, Mr. Lawler." Right there. But he loved wrestling. He was so respectful of it. And as a kid, he watched wrestling growing up, and he idolized the bad guys. He told me Nature Boy Buddy Rogers was his hero. And I think it affected Andy in the fact that he liked the fact that he told me that. He said, I was fascinated by the fact that when I watched this guy, I could tell, even as a kid, I could tell that he was intentionally trying to make me not like him. And he said, but I still did like him. And so that stuck in his mind so much so that later on, when Andy became a television star or doing his stand-up comedy, so to speak, that was his intention. Andy, he was not a comedian. He hated to be called a comedian. Never told a joke in his life. And what he did when he went on TV, he was, in his mind, he was sort of trying to be the bad guy. He didn't want people to laugh. He wanted people to be uncomfortable. And if you watch the first time he was ever on Saturday Night Live, the poor guy stood out there and he puts on a record of the Mighty Mouse theme, and he just stands there looking at the audience and drinking a glass of water. And then all of a sudden, he just spring into action and pantomime. Here I come to save the day. And when you watched it, it became funny later, but while you were actually watching, you almost felt sorry for the guy. You thought, does he know that this is not good, or does he think this is good? I mean, and that was Andy's whole career, and he wanted to be, the guy that could make the audience uncomfortable. And so then later on, he just once he became a star, he wanted to live out his fantasy of actually being a bad guy wrestler, and he thought the best way to do that was wrestle against women. And he think that would immediately make him a bad guy, and that's how it all started. And and another thing a lot of people don't realize, Andy actually went to Vince McMahon Sr., the Vince that you see on TV, to his father, and approached him with the idea of coming to New York. Andy was from Long Island, New York, and he approached Vince's father with the idea of letting him wrestle women at one of the WWE events. And Vince Sr. actually turned him down. He said, "Andy," he said, "our fans are so skeptical anyway." And he said, I'm hesitant to involve a Hollywood actor like yourself with our wrestling shows, because I think that the people might think that we're all just actors." And so he turned him down, and just fortunately for me, a guy named Bill Apter, who was a wrestling magazine writer, overheard the conversation, and he was already knew Andy, was a friend of Andy, and he said, "Hey, if you're really serious about doing this," he said, "I have a friend, Jerry Lawler, down in Memphis that has some territory down there. They have," and Andy was from New York. He didn't even know about the Memphis wrestling. He just knew about the New York wrestling. So Bill told Andy, he said, "I'll give you Jerry Lawler's number and tell him." He said, "I think they would be receptive to having you come down and wrestle women." And so I get a call late that night from Bill Apter, and he says, "You know Andy Kaufman?" I said, "Yeah, the guy on Taxi." He said, yeah, you know who he is?" I said, "Yeah, he's Lotko on Taxi. It's like the #1 show on television." Of course I know. He said, "Well, he's going to call you tomorrow." "Is he going to call me? What do you mean he's going to, Andy Kaufman's going to call me?" And he said, "Yeah." So then Bill told me the whole story, and then sure enough, Andy Kaufman calls me the next day, and I said, "Come on down. We would love to have you down in Memphis." And that's how it all got started. He originally came down just to wrestle women, and we did that for about 4 weeks in a row. And then I just went to Andy, and honestly, I was selfishly thinking, how can I get the rub off of this big TV star some kind of way for myself? And I said, Andy, I think this has gone about as far as you can go with wrestling women. I think you really need to have a match with a man. And he said, oh, no, I can't do that. I'll get hurt or whatever. And I said, well, you know what? I think you and I can have a match. You can have a match with me, and I'll make sure you don't get hurt. And I think it would be really a lot of fun and get a lot of publicity. And he said, okay. And so that's how it all worked out. You know, but he was, I mean, the great thing about Andy was, and like I said, he loved the business so much, and he would tell me, you know, I'm in your world. Just tell me what to do. And he didn't try to suggest anything, but any ad lib or anything like that kind of stuff, which basically is the way it turned out. Almost everything we did was just spur of the moment, ad lib kind of stuff. Even the slap on David Letterman was not planned. Nobody knew that I was going to slap Andy. Andy didn't know. David certainly didn't know. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't even know. I just, when I watch it back, and I watched it back a million times, and I'm just looking and thinking, what was I thinking? I just knew that we were only going to be on for 2 segments, and they were expecting me to apologize to Andy, and Andy apologized to me. And then Andy was supposed to get up and sing "What the World Needs Now Is Love, Sweet Love," and that was the way the segment was supposed to go. And as it went on, we did our first segment, then the second segment we were going, and he never really apologized to me, and I never really apologized to him. And because I told him earlier, I said, you know, that'll be funny what they want us to do, but if we apologize to each other, that's gonna put an end to our wrestling each other down in our Tennessee territory. And he said, yeah, I know, man. But, and the only thing that I guess put it in my mind, I'll never forget the way he said it, because it was like a New York term or something. He said, I wonder what would happen if you just hauled off and slugged me. And I said, oh no, hey, we can't do that. First of all, they're taping the show. If I punch you, they're not gonna show that, you know, they won't show it. And I said, second of all, I'll get arrested. I said, I can't get arrested up here in New York. I gotta be back in Memphis tomorrow. He said, yeah, but wouldn't that be great? I said, well, we can't do that. And that's the way it was left. I didn't see him again until we went out on the show. But I guess that he put that in the back of my mind. And when we got to the end of the second segment, I could tell that Dave knew that this has gone off the rails and it wasn't going anything like they had told him it was supposed to go. And so he was just wrapping up. He said, well, you know, we're going to take a break and we'll get the hoses out, or we'll do something here. But I knew that we were going to be it. We were going to be off after that. And Paul Schaefer started playing the music, and we were going. And it was like an out-of-body experience. I just stood up, I looked Andy right in the eye, and I just hauled off and slapped him as hard as I could. Knocked him right out of the chair. And Dave was so shocked. It was like Dave was sitting looking at the camera like this, and this all happened like right here. I'm knocking the taste out of Andy's mouth, and Dave he couldn't even look. He had some papers in his hand and just kept looking that way, and it was just, I mean, he was just in shock, you know. And he said later on, he said it was the first time in my career that I ever lost control of my own television show. But and then even after I slapped him, security came and put me back in the back green room, and in my mind I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, now I screwed this whole thing up. They're not going to show, you know, they're just going to re-tape something else and show a rerun or something. They're never going to show that. So I sat back there for like 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden, and I'm the only person in the green room, and so all of a sudden the door kind of creaks open a little bit, and this little young intern guy kind of sticks his head. He said, Mr. Lawler? And I said, yeah. He said, well, Dave wants to know if you want to come back out and sort of wrap this thing up. I said, sure, I'll do whatever. So at that time, I thought, well, now if they're obviously going to show that, right? If they're going to break me back out and sort of wrap things up. So I walked back out, and now there was a studio audience of like maybe 750 people in this, at Sullivan Studio, or Rockefeller Center. And, so, and all of a sudden, they became like wrestling fans. When I walked back through the curtain, they all started booing me, right? They were Andy fans. So I get sat down, and Andy was still over there holding the side of his head, and some woman's checking on him and everything. And so the director's going 10, 9, and Dave goes, Andy, are you going to come back out here or not? And he said, no. If I do, I'll say words you can't use on television. It's like 3, 2, 1, and Dave said, well, I'm here, Jerry's here, and Andy's sort of here, but sometimes I wish Tom Snyder were still here. But that's not the case tonight. So Jerry, I want to thank you for being here, and he reached over and shake my hand, and all of a sudden, here comes Andy. And like I said, I had no clue what he was going to do. Dave had no clue. Here comes Andy, right over Dave's shoulder, and he lets out this string of obscenities. And this is the one thing Dave told me later, that he said, I'd never heard Andy swear, never heard Andy curse, and I had never either. And all of a sudden, here he comes with certainly words you couldn't say on television, right? I'm just ranting and raving, and I'm just looking at him, and I'm thinking, with my body language, I'm going to try to show this. And Andy, what are you doing? You know, they're obviously going to show the slap, but they can't show this. So why are you doing? So I just kind of turned and I crossed my legs like, come on, man, what are you doing? But he just kept going and just kept cursing and the worst stuff you could ever imagine. And you can go on YouTube and look that up too. They have the unedited version of that over there too. I don't know how they've saved that, but so anyway, he kept cursing, and I'm sitting there, and then finally he grabs Dave's, I think it was actually water, not coffee, but anyway, threw that at me, and I jumped up. But the funny thing about when he did, it was sort of like when I slapped him, I stood up and I looked him right in the eye, and I think he knew what was coming, before he did. And when he grabbed the coffee, he stopped. If you go back and watch it, you'll see he grabs the coffee, and he looks me right like that, like that coffee, about to throw it on you, right? So then he throws it, and I was able to move out of the way, and I went towards him. Security guards came in and everything, and the security grabbed me and took me not back to the green room. This guy takes me right out to the elevator, and we were up on, I don't know what floor, but anyway, he says, come on, Mr. Lawler. And so I'm thinking he's gonna take me to the security office and take me to jail or whatever. And he gets me on the elevator, and he says, man, I just want you to get you out of the building, because Kaufman's elevator don't go all the way to the top floor. I'll tell you that right now. He'll probably try to have you arrested, so I'm gonna get you back to your hotel. So I go downstairs, go back to my hotel. This was at like 7 o'clock, and didn't hear another word from anybody. This was before, cell phones or anything like that. Didn't hear a word from anybody, and turned the TV on that night at 11:30, and there was, they showed everything. They showed, all they did was beep out, Actually, they didn't put a beep, it was better. They put like a cuckoo clock in there or something. Nothing but a cuckoo. It turned out great. And then immediately the hotel phone started ringing. New York Times calling, New York Post calling, every TV show's calling, and it was just went, as you would say today, it went viral before things were viral. So that was the Andy Kaufman story.
Andy never cashed a check.
Oh yeah, and all the times that Andy came down to Memphis to wrestle, I think the smallest amount that we paid him, and this was considered a lot for back in 1983 or whatever, but like to get $2,000 for one match was a lot of money at the time, right? And every time we'd write Andy a $1,500 or $2,000 check every week, and didn't even realize until after Andy passed away, his brother had all his checks. He never cashed one of his checks for doing all the rest of it. So he just loved it. Okay.
Say, somehow you got involved in John Snyder's Just a Good Old Boy song. How did you get involved with it?
Gosh, how did I get involved with that? Excuse me. Have you seen the video of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But then, of course, now I think that now in today's woke society, I don't know how cool it would be to be a part of the the Good Old Boys song. But yeah, I've known John Snyder for a long time. I've met him through doing some of the Dukes Fest. Have you ever heard of those things?
Yes.
Once a year, they have those things. And what was his name? Cooter. Cooter. Anyway, yeah, he was a big wrestling fan, and he got in touch with me and had me come and do some of those Dukes Fest shows, and but that just it's a good question. Who got me involved with doing this song? I can't even remember now. They were all kind of cool people there. Bobby Bear, who I hadn't seen him in 100 years, and I'd actually sang a duet with him years and years ago. When I lived in Hendersonville, Tennessee, when I first in the early '70s, that was where all the country music people lived. Jerry Jarrett and I had a home across the lake, right down, like probably maybe 6 houses down from me. Conway Twitty lived right there. Jerry Jarrett bought a house on Old Hickory Lake from George Jones and Tammy Wynette. When they split up, Jerry Jarrett bought their home. Next door to him was Johnny Cash. Next door to him was Bobby Bear. And so we kind of, sort of everybody kind of knew each other. I went out to my mailbox one day, and I looked in there and I saw this letter, and it said, somebody says, gotta be a joke. It had the name Razzie Bailey on it. Anybody ever heard of Razzie Bailey? Anyway, well, he was a country music star that he never got to be a real big star. But anyway, he moved in right next door, and they were putting his mail in my mailbox. And I was throwing it away because I thought it was a joke. I never heard of anybody Razzie. But anyway, Tanya Tucker was on the thing, and on the Good Old Boys thing. And honestly, I don't remember exactly how I got invited to do it, but somehow I got the invite to be there. And it was like 40 or 50 different country, music stars. I was probably the only really non-singer in the whole group that was part of the filming there. But it was kind of fun.
Anybody got rapid fire, one answer questions?
Yeah.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
No, we got a bet going on this.
Does he know what you say? I mean,
Oh, yeah, they all know.
Oh, they all know? Actually, he sort of asked me this beforehand, and I
Not
said-
before today.
No,
Yeah,
not
Chelsea
before today.
told me.
Yeah, I said, nobody will guess what my favorite ice cream flavor is.
Rocky Road.
Oh, you know, I was gonna let you
Oh,
guess.
dang it.
Yeah, Rocky Road, that's my favorite.
So y'all will be fine.
Oh, you guessed Rocky Road before?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that
You know
was
what you
before.
talking about?
No, I don't know what time.
I owe him a lot.
He owed me a big cone of Rocky Road ice cream.
All right, I think we're gonna clear this room out of chairs, and if you guys wanna start, start forming a line somehow, we'll start with these front chairs. Come on up here and grab some pictures.
What personalizer did I sign?
The sign.
And I did cut the number down to 5.
Oh, I thought you were filming me.
Go ahead and pull 500 out.
You can have the rocks. Sure.
Oh, and you taking money out of Steve's mouth?
No, Steve got that himself. He got it himself.
I thought Steve was back, Steve's going again.
He's back to clean it, but
Okay.
you know,
Something after the ball works?
No, he sold it.
Yeah.
Pretty well. I don't know.
You know, they're actually on eBay now.
What's that?
The best of Memphis. Remember that guy used to come around to the shows selling all those? He's got them on
Personalized
eBay
or no?
now, or
No.
somebody bootleg, eBay either way.
Go to it before you buy one.
Alright guys, as you've seen in the video, in the last bit there, when he was Jerry was signing them, I actually got paid $50 for 2 extra items. Three of the three I told you about was free, was already paid for, and the 3 I'm referring to is the classic Memphis wrestling, the loser leaves town, the best of Bill Dundee versus Jerry Lawler, and each one actually got one of these with a matching sticker. And then classic Memphis wrestling, the Monsters versus Jerry Lawler, and classic wrestling Memphis, the versus Jerry Lawler versus Andy Kaufman. Which, fun fact, you didn't see in the video, but no, was a person that actually wore a Andy Kaufman shirt. And then I also got this 8x10 of Jerry Lawler. And again, I got the sticker with it. And then a Funko, which he actually went a little bit too low there and put it there. Put the WWE Hall of Fame 07 there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a big old thumbs up. And share it all of you across social media. And before I go, I did have to edit the video a lot, so I hope you appreciate that. See you guys next time.